All right, welcome back to Morgan on Purpose. This month, we're welcoming back one of my close friends and colleagues, my business partner, Bill Mulvahill, our first repeat guest on the podcast. How does it feel to have that honor bestowed upon you, Bill?
It's a huge honor. I'm speechless, honestly.
Rarely speechless, this guy. So this is a big deal. Um, so, anyways, there's a reason why we're having Bill back, and I like to start the year with intention and purpose. And in that vein, we wanted to kick off this season of the podcast by discussing business building. And who better to discuss that with than my business partner, Bill? So let's start with something that's been on my mind a lot recently. And some of you may know I'm writing a new book about exit planning, building business, letting go, all that fun stuff. And I'm kind of analyzing people's or business owners' relationship with their business. And I've been exploring this idea that when it comes time to sell your business, or even come up with an exit plan, even like to consider selling your business, um, the owners who identify too much with their business can't actually let it go. So when that happens, these business owners, they end up hurting themselves. They can hurt their retirement prospects, their personal finances, and maybe even their family and relationships, frankly, uh, and also the business, right? The business can be hurt in this process. So let's start there. How do you think an established business owner should be thinking about their relationship with their business?
That's a good question because I think, it's inevitable that your identities are intertwined because anyone who's building a business, the only way you're going to have the energy to grow a business, especially a small business, um, you have to be extraordinarily committed. So there's inevitably going to be kind of that identity intertwined. Um, but I think, it's just important, obviously, to have some sense of balance in your life. You have to have other priorities, hobbies, family, religion, causes you care about outside of work to create that balance. And I also think that it's important that you work, within your business to kind of try to make it less owner dependent too, through having a strong team, having processes in place, to make it less dependent on you. But it's a real challenge because it's inevitable that there is a lot of your identity that's intertwined, in the business.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is inevitable. And then I kind of get to this point where I start thinking about attachment versus detachment. And I think on one sense, very normal, if not necessary, as you say, to identify uh, with the business. Um, Also, you want to be as detached as possible throughout that process. You can't be attached to any outcome over the next month or 2 months or even the next year that shouldn't impact how you feel about yourself or how you go about your day to day ultimately. And it's like, so how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like you do have to have some sense of detachment. I think that you can't place your self worth, too closely with the outcomes in your business because, um, you uh, you know business is risky. Businesses fail. You run into competitive challenges or struggles with managing a team where that just sometimes lead to you falling short of goals. Maybe the economy has some issues. Like it's inevitable that there's bumps in the road or that there's just risk involved. And so I think if it's too intertwined, it's a challenge. And so I think detachment's probably a really healthy word. I think there's two things you have to balance. Like you have to be committed in order to accomplish your goals, but yeah, you have to have a healthy detachment too, or else it can just cause a lot of problems, given the
Mhm.
risk that's inherent in running a business.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where like just becoming a parent for my part, like framed everything in such a much healthier way. Everything was for my kids and my family as opposed to some success in the business that would affirm my self-identity. It's like the self-identity is so clear every day when you wake up, and before you go to bed. So one reason this conversation about separating from your business is so hard is that it requires a shift in mindset, um, that is often needed to grow a business. So I've talked a lot about the need for business owners to own that title, to identify as business owner, entrepreneur, founder, whatever that is. And you could argue, kind of like you did, that you need that level of focused commitment when you're starting out. 50% of new businesses fail within the first 5 years. Um, but is there a trap here? So like, what level of commitment or identifying with the business is actually healthy?
Yeah. I think in some ways it's a matter of priorities, and it kind of goes back to you as a person to have the right set of priorities in life. And at the top, you have to have some sense of values to your life that matter. The only Your number one value and kind of principle for life can't just be like financial success or business success. So I think you have to be like a values oriented person. I think your family, and religion, those things always have to come ahead of business. And so I think it's kind of, in some ways this topic is a lot bigger than um, just a business conversation. It's just like how to be a balanced, healthy person. And I think if you are a very talented entrepreneur, but you aren't a, if you don't have like a strong sense of who you are as a human being, um, I think that can cause all sorts of problems. So I think it's important first to have that strong sense of who you are, to have your values set, um, and to, properly prioritize family and religion and other things that should be more important than entrepreneurial success.
Is this where a mission statement comes in handy?
For the business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think so. I know, we've gone through this process of setting our mission and values for our firm and goals. And I think in that business planning process where you set your mission, your values and goals, I think uh you should kind of allude to those types of things, to make it clear that um that a certain kind of financial target isn't the only objective in all of this. I know for us, like having, creating a culture where our team members have balance is super important to us. We've talked about that, and we talk about that with them all the time. Simply growing revenue and hitting certain financial targets isn't the only outcome for us. There's a certain kind of set of values that we like to live out in how we serve our clients and interact with our team members. And I think for any business, you kind of want to capture those things in that business planning process.
Yeah, it's always coming back to first principles, and I think, especially as you build a team, having those values, having those principles, it guides every conversation, it frames every conversation, and you don't want it to become a cliche, but also as you confront new decisions, uh, those should be values informed, and those can only be values informed if you've actually named it, and you get alignment, and you get the whole team to kind of commit to that framework for moving forward. In our business, we really value diligence. Um, we really value an optimistic view of the future. Doesn't mean everything's rosy or going to happen happily, right? There's still going to be hardship, but we do think the world's getting better, right? We do think it's possible to make a better situation for ourselves, for our communities, and for the world. We really value craftsmanship as a one, just like great financial planning, great wealth advisory. We want to do our best work. I think that stuff is so important. How about with the family? Because obviously you translate from like, I got a mission statement in my business, but I think sometimes we kind of forget that like in the family, we got to have this focused attention as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, uh, I think, I think that's super important. I think the challenge there is oftentimes in business, we're used to kind of going about these processes and you set goals, you set a mission statement, and a lot of times on the personal side of things, you don't do that, or we're not as used to doing that. But it's important. It's obviously important for everyone, and I think if you are like a grounded, values oriented person, um, people around you are going to notice. It's going to make your life a lot better. And it's going to make you a better leader in your business too.
We'll get your spouse on next time, and we'll ask her the hard questions about family meetings. Uh, and sometimes one thing I think is hard is like as a business owner, when you translate that to family meetings, you're kind of used to running the show. We're unique, right? We've always been a part of a partnership, and so you have to have collaboration. But I think for like a solo business owner who's used to calling the shots and running the show, and then you go home and it's like, oh no, this actually needs to be consultation, right? We are equal partners here. We are equal stakeholders in this family. And I think that can be a challenging transition. And you kind of see people go both ways. They either become very passive at home and kind of defining that whatever the family's financial or just aspirational future looks like, or they become overly controlling. We both have their kind of unhealthy trade-offs
Yeah.
involved there.
I think that's just a challenge in general for solo business owners. Is that, I think the benefit is that you do get to kind of run the show. You don't have anyone that you need to answer to. The challenge with that is that only gets you so far. No one's forcing you to sit down and like have a vision, have a business plan, have values. And so it's easy to skip that step, but eventually you're going to hit a wall. Eventually you do need to have a team around you. And whether or not they're partners in the business, they need to be partners in how things operate day to day. And so you need to have a collaborative mindset at some point, or else you're just going to hit a ceiling because you can't do it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your experience, what level do you think a business needs to be at before owners are comfortable practicing detachment? And we could see detachment as like delegating, right? Building team, perhaps. Does it get easier or harder as the business grows? But yeah, when do you start delegating?
Oh, I think pretty quick. Yeah, I think that like if we're talking specific dollar amounts in terms of like revenue, it's going to be different per industry. But like you should be delegating administrative tasks pretty quickly, regardless of what industry, and you can get that type of support pretty early on. And I think so delegating is super important from day one. In terms of just like emotional detachment too from your business, I think that's important from day one too, because if you're starting a business from ground zero, or maybe it's just a really small business, that just means that the risk of failure is even higher too. So if you're going to take that leap, you have to have some healthy detachment from the outcome, or else it's just too tough to stomach. So you have to have that pretty much from day one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How about, and obviously there's building the team internally to the business, but I also think there's like a detachment element to just building your professional team. You could even say for like a very average quality professional that you hire, just the simple act of hiring them or working to hire them, it shows a level of detachment, and it shows a level of, I don't think I have all the answers. Or if I do, I don't think I have all the energy to really tie this all together. And obviously you build a high quality team of professionals supporting you, your family, your business. And we think the sky's the limit in that framework. That's something we propose. But how does building the professional team play into all this?
Yeah. Well, I think it requires humility. Like it requires you to, again, I think when you start a business, there's this balance of like, a healthy detachment versus ego, because you obviously think you're going to succeed and you obviously believe in yourself. But you can't do it all on your own. So that requires a level of humility and a level of kind of ability to see things objectively.
On the one hand, you're overly optimistic,
Yeah.
as we all are as entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
On the other hand, you have to have this humility of, but I probably can't do it all on my own.
Hmm. Yep. And I mean, any business in any industry, it's a complicated thing. You know, there's 1,000 tasks that need to get done. You need to deliver a service or good to a client, and then another client, and another client, over and over again. So there's processes that need to be in place. The products need to be made and delivered. Services need to be delivered. It needs to be reliable. It's a really complicated thing you're trying to build out, and so you can't do it all on your own. Uh, you know, and even if you don't have a huge staff that you're building out at this point in your journey, um, there's still going to be other outside professionals and suppliers. So like an external team that you're going to have to build. Um, and again, that requires some level of detachment. That requires a level of humility to kind of pull them in, and a willingness to say, like, you know, I can't do this on my own. I need to hire a fractional CFO, or I need to hire a really good accounting firm. I need to hire an attorney. Um, so it requires that. And it also requires kind of a detachment as well when you are assessing them too. You kind of have to be, you know, level-headed and honest in your assessments of them, so you bring in the right team members.
Yeah, like maybe you shouldn't use uh, your uncle's golf buddy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yep.
an honest assessment can come into play. Um, and like I kind of think as, you know, you're putting the team together, uh, ownership is such an important uh, aspect of that all. And I would say internally as well as externally. It's like, who owns this? And I think ultimately you are responsible, but you don't have to own everything, right? So you are responsible for your personal finances or your business success, or making sure that you know you're adequately insured, or that you have an estate plan, like that you are responsible to file taxes, right? So it's like all these things, the buck does stop with you. Um, but I think like the next decision is, okay, so who owns this? And what I found as a business owner is, if I have to close the loop, like there's a problem, right? I have to trust that this other person on my team is not only going to lead this process, but close the loop, right? And then it's up to us to review that. It's up to me if this person isn't capable of it, right? So then I move to someone else. Right. But like, so the buck stops with me still, but like I need people who own a task start to finish, and can close the loop.
I think to add on to that too, this connects to the values topic that we were talking about earlier. Just like within your own firm and as an entrepreneur, it's important that you have some set of values um, that you're operating by. Those values should also be what you assess your outside professionals and your outside team by. It's important that they're aligned with it. And if they are aligned with it, if they are following through regularly, if you've learned that you can trust them and their quality of work, it allows you to um, not have to um, double check their work all the time. At first, you obviously have to, because you're kind of still building that trust. But I think that's why that's important.
Yeah, yeah, maybe even go so far as, you know, share the family mission statement, or share the business values. And that's something, you know, we sometimes do when we're making introductions, and obviously with approval and all that stuff, we say, hey, this is XYZ family. This is what they're all about. Here's a little bit about, you know, what's important to them, what their goals are, what they have in place, their family, you know, all that stuff. And it's just so helpful when you're kind of starting a new professional relationship, that person isn't also starting from zero, right? And that they also know what's important to you. So little segue. So many listeners know Bill and I are based in the Twin Cities. We're based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Um, it sometimes feels weird to build a business, and even help our clients build business, or, you know, just work on their personal finances, uh, when there's so much turmoil going on in the world. Um, we're seeing it locally, right? We got street closures, we got federal agents, and that kind of thing. Um, and I don't think this has to be political. It's just, but the country's pretty divided, right? We know that. People think that other people who disagree with them, are immoral, right? So we're surrounded by a lot of negativity, and I just wanted to like touch on what it takes to build something in that kind of environment. So what have we seen work and not work? Um, and I don't want to like be the first to answer the question, but I keep coming back to this. There is a sense of idealism with entrepreneurial activity. There's a sense of just like, uh, you're optimistic just because you're building something. Why would you build something if you didn't think, uh, someone, maybe yourself included, would be better off for building it? So, what do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I think to add to maybe like add to the question, um, what's happened around here in the Twin Cities in the last month, there's no getting around the fact that it's really affected our lives, the lives of people around us, and it's had a massive impact in our community. And to just call it out, it's tough. It's really tough having that going on while you're trying to build a business and serve clients and just deal with like normal things that you do for your clients. Um, to give listeners a sense, it's, we all felt our lives impacted by COVID 6 years ago. And I think the impact hasn't felt too different in terms of the consequences to that around here, at least for the last month.
With the exception that there's no federal support, right? There's a lot of
Yeah,
federal support during
yeah,
COVID, and this
for
time,
sure.
yeah,
Yep.
kind of the antithesis of that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the answer is it's really hard. It's been had a very real impact on our community and us and people we know and love. Um, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that uh, I think you have to just give people space and grace, and I think that applies to ourselves too. Um, you're not going to be as ambitious, and you have to understand that maybe some of your team members aren't going to be as ambitious and working their way through their to-do list. Maybe some deadlines have to be extended, things like that. And I think also this is where having a strong team and processes are really valuable. Just speaking for myself, for a few weeks there, things were so intense that you don't have a lot of brain space to just think about the business. So you just kind of fall back to your habits. And in a business, your habits are your processes. And so I think that has really helped us just kind of keep things humming for the last few weeks. And I think that's true for any business and any industry. So again, just falling back on your processes and your procedures and making sure that you have those kind of well tuned. Those are probably the two main thoughts. I'm curious what you would add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think trust is so important, um, and it does come back to values too. I think our business. We have for a firm our size, we have a decent sized team, but compared to like a restaurant or something like that, we have a small team. Um, and so we were in the lucky position of like our employees all felt safe coming to work. Um, but that was abnormal for the broader community, right? Um, and it's like, as a business owner, how do you navigate that? And I think the answer is just the best you can. And like you said, with a lot of grace for yourself and for others. I think what we've seen is understanding grow and kind of the bonds of community grow. Frankly, I'm hopeful. I know we've seen it, and I'm hoping it continues. Um, but that idea that like, even if they're a part-time employee, it's like, I'm invested in you and you're invested in me, and our mutual welfare does it impacts each other, right? I can't just like quote unquote cut this loss. Um, we are more connected to that. We are a community, whether part of a business or whatever it is. Um, so I think the answer is that there's really no answers, and it is But I think the people who do the best in these environments are the entrepreneurs, where you see so many restaurants open up their doors, start giving out free meals, doing deliveries. Um, this is all nonprofit, for profit, whatever. It's all entrepreneurial activity. Grassroots by its very nature is entrepreneurial. Um, and I think it's just like human commitment and action stemming from values and purpose.
Yeah. I think part of it is comes back to leadership too. I think that great leaders in times like this, they're gonna fall back on the values. And again, I think that's why it's so important that your business has clear values, that it's communicated and it kind of like oozes throughout your organization. If that's something that's already been in place, it's going to be a lot easier to handle difficult situations like this, because there's not really going to be a question on where people stand. And I don't think you have to be overly political. I don't think, having values and as a leader means that you have to be overly political, either. So I think that's important. And I think that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah. The myth of politics is that everything is political. And the reality of life is that very little of it is. All right. So, Bill, thanks for joining us. And listeners, thanks to you also for joining us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, wherever you listen to podcasts or watching this, whatever that is. In our next episode, which will come out in a couple weeks, we'll be going deeper into what it takes to build a business. But this time with a focus on moms. So executive coach Amelia Gandomi Lewis will be here talking about how moms can harness their skills to become better leaders. She's got amazing perspectives on how to shift your mindset and small tweaks that can create huge results. So you're not going to want to miss that.